Hi everyone, my name is Zane, and in case you don't know who I am a brand management consultant, a coach, a speaker, as well as a live streamer. And a lot of people have been asking me some questions about public speaking and also speaking online, such as hosting or live streaming. So I figured I'd create this video for you, which is called 7 Things You Need to Know About Speaking in those contexts that I mentioned. Now, since I had to write this down from scratch and I thought might as well do this properly, I will also be releasing a PDF that will detail extensively all the points that I'll be talking about in this video. So if you want a copy of this PDF absolutely free, stay tuned till the end of the video to find out how you can do it. Now, for those of you who are still watching this video after that introduction, let me tell you there are also 3 bonus ideas or tips that I've got on top of the 7 that I will also include in the PDF, which I will mention a little bit at the end of the video, so stay tuned. All right, let's get to the list. Tip number 1, know what you're gonna say. Obviously, preparation is key, right? By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail, according to Benjamin Franklin. Now, I have a technique I use for presentations and pitches, which is Guy Kawasaki's 10-20-30 rule. You can find out more about that online. It's pretty simple. It's 10 slides, 20 minutes of presentation, and no smaller than 30 font points in each slide. Also, do not write down what you're going to say on the slides because people read faster than you can speak, and once they figured out all you're doing is reading the words on the slides, they're going to be ahead of you and get really bored. Another technique I use is something called problem, insight, solution, methodology, considerations, and what's next. Problem is basically setting up what you're about to speak and into the world that you're opening up for them. The second thing is insights, which is what do you know that may be new or unique or fresh about that subject matter? What is the solution that you're presenting to them? How does it work? What are some of the things that you need to handle or the considerations that you may need assistance or support with to solve this problem? And the final slide or the final part of your presentation is really what's next? What do you want? What now? What's the pitch? What's the sell? What is the summary of what you're saying? And how would you like people to respond to what you're saying? Is there a call to action? Or is there just sort of an agreement of accepting what you have to say as a new point of information that you're presenting to the world? Sounds complicated, but you can find all this stuff online, and I have those extra details in the PDF. Point number 2, know your audience. In fact, put your audience first. Now, it's very easy to get excited about what you want to say to people, but I think it's a real important difference between ordinary speakers and professional speakers, because professional speakers tend to know or at least figure out who they're speaking to. If you're still new and you don't really have an audience or you don't have data to talk about who they are, then you need to make some assumptions. You need to identify your target audience. You can do that with demographics, psychographics, or I've even used the PESTLE model, which is the PESTLE, political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And how I look at it is, what is their political leanings? What is their economic status? What is their social standing? What are their technological understanding? Doesn't have to be internet and computers. It could be about the technology that you're speaking about. It could be advertising, architecture. Who are you speaking to? Architects or people who don't know anything about architecture? You need to know. As well as, of course, having different settings of what you're saying has different legal implications. Speaking on a comedy show has a different legal impact as you speaking on a news broadcast or an interview, right? And of course, environmental, what kind of platform are you using? What are some of the things that may be limitations to that medium? What are some of the advantages of the medium? Know exactly what mode you're speaking in or what model you're speaking in. And all that will give you a better idea of how to present and how to speak on your presentation. Finally, tweak the language and style according to that. If you're speaking to a young crowd, don't be so formal and so boring, obviously. But if you're speaking to a bunch of intellectuals, it's important to make sure that all your facts are accurate and everything is sourced and everything has a point of reference of the statements you're making. So always remember to make sure that you tweak your language, style, and delivery and stay consistent. Point number 3, speak from your understanding, not from the script. What does that mean? I've seen a lot of people present, and except for people who can afford teleprompters, which is not that expensive right now because you can buy them online and just slot in your tablet or your iPad and use the teleprompter app to read like a professional newscaster. But for most people who don't have that, they tend to look on down to their paper and be reading it nonstop, constantly. And not only that is very distracting because you're not making eye contact with your audience, especially if you're recording yourself on video. It is important for you to understand that reading is a very boring tone, and it's very hard to enunciate and emphasize certain words because you're just reading the words along. Unless, of course, you're trained to do it, then I would say that it is best for you to read from your understanding or speak from your understanding, meaning whatever you're about to say, make sure you understand the subject matter well enough for you to be able to catch yourself in case you lose your way or you're not so sure where you're going with it. Now, there are important techniques that you can learn that are advanced in speech writing or public speaking writing, and they are myth, metaphor, and musicality. What? Well, myth is basically not about telling lies and stories, but really keeping an element of having your audience discover the information you're sharing with them together with them, rather than having a tone of you knowing everything and telling everybody else as if they don't know anything. So it's important to create sort of that story style presentation in anything that you do. The second thing was metaphor, and metaphor just really means using simple examples to emphasize on the points you're making. Like if it's really simple, it's just like cracking an egg. It gives people some things to visualize about as well as to relate to, so that it's easier for them to understand what exactly you're speaking about in case they're not experts of the subject matter you're talking about. And of course, finally, musicality. Music to speaking, well, there's pace, there's rhythm, there's tones, and there's inflections and things like that. You need to watch the masters to understand that there are a lot of ways to speak at different times, at different speeds, as well as focusing on certain words to make sure that it doesn't become dull and monotonous throughout the whole presentation. Okay, point number 4. And I know it's weird that this is point number 4, but I wanted to get those 3 things out of the way first before I say this. Point number 4 has 3 things. Practice, practice, practice. The first practice implies about you practicing in every way you can possibly do it. If you're not comfortable for the first time, use a full script and then start cutting it down to notes. And finally, record yourself on video and watch yourself to see how you look like, how you sound. Be objective about what you see and start improving on that script or on that preparation until you're comfortable with what you're watching online. Practice context number 2. Train like a K-pop Academy trainee. What does that mean? If you understand the K-pop Academy, you will know that for one song that they learn a choreography, they're doing thousands of hours of practice and repetition to get that choreography perfect, so that anytime they had to perform and had any variations to the dance, it's very easy for them to just adapt because they have trained themselves to have muscle memory of performing that choreography. So it's important that you have that kind of discipline as well, to spend a lot of time going over it over and over again until you feel comfortable with the subject matter or the content of your presentation. And finally, third context of practice is practice with emotions, mental practice, and motivation. When you are trying to influence people, having an idea of keeping your emotions out usually does not have a productive element to it. Somehow or rather, when we start to have emotional attachments to what we're presenting, whether we're in love with it, we like it, we're passionate about it, we're angry about it even, it is important that you kind of insert those emotions into your practice so that you start growing your skills in presenting different things at different times and different contexts. Mental practice really is just finding out ways on how you can learn how to practice in your mind how it's going to work with your eyes closed and just rehearsing it in your head to see how it's going to work. A lot of ways to learn and mental practice is available out there, and I will give you some tips in my PDF. And last but not least, motivation. You need to be motivated in what you're speaking. It is very obvious when someone is not in it and compared to someone who's extremely behind what they're advocating or what they're speaking about. Whether it's a topic about clothes, music, or something more serious like global warming or racism, it is important that you present it in a way that you believe in what you have to say, and that really makes a difference with people who are ordinary or just plain vanilla. Point number 5, speak beyond the words. Now, some people have mentioned that 80% of effective communication is nonverbal. However, a lot of them tend to just jump towards body language, tonality, and mannerism as a way to enhance their ability to speak. For me, there are 3 key points: context, clusters, and congruence. What is context? Context really is, where are you coming from? Where are you speaking from? If you're talking about a subject matter, are you presenting to those people as an expert? Are you? Are you not? And if you're not, be consistent with that context. It's not okay to tell a joke at a funeral, because the context of a funeral is sad, and telling a joke may not be the most appropriate thing at that time, unless you're extremely masterful, okay? So to be safe, make sure you're very clear of the context of the way you're presenting. Clusters, points that you're making throughout your presentation, whether there's 7 points, 10 points, 3 points, you need to have some sort of overarching theme such that the clusters make sense to be with each other, so that it doesn't jump all over the place and it doesn't come out of the framing of the listener's mind, okay? And finally, congruence. Congruence really just means that the words you're using are congruent with everything else that's happening on the video or on the presentation, which is your hands, your mannerism, which is what we were talking about earlier, body language, tonality, even accents. All that is important, because if you are not consistent in terms of everything else with the words you're speaking, it becomes awkward and a little bit odd for the listener, and tends to make them kind of just get out of the focus zone. Number 6, personalize it. Now, the reason why I put this point in is because a lot of people tend to get very computer-like or very textbook-like in writing what they want to say or putting down the points, because they're afraid that they might not be taken seriously if they were too informal. Now, of course, there has to be some skill in putting informality in your speaking, but I always believe that people want to listen to a person speaking to them, not Alexa. Which means if you're just going to sound like a machine or an AI model, and you are just unemotional about it and not have any personal details, accents, and if there's even time, put in some personal anecdotes, just to give that whole presentation or that whole body of speech some sort of variance, some sort of texture, so that it gives it a bit of color instead of it just being, again, plain vanilla. Finally, number 7 of the 7 things you need to know, not including the bonus 3, is observe, channel, and learn. Observe really is just watching the best do their thing. TED Talks, talk show host monologues, stand-up comedy, people like John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, Trevor Noah, game shows like The Fix on Netflix, where they present solutions to global ideas with silly solutions, and watch how they present their cases. These are interesting ways to observe how different people do it with different styles. Channel would be if you were to play little mini games in your practices, and you were to say, I'm going to present this as Eminem, or I'm going to present this as John Oliver. How would you do it? It's not about mimicking them. It's about channeling their energy and their style, so that you can slowly figure out what's right for you. In the beginning, it's going to sound like you're trying to mimic, but really it's about you finding your way about what is the best style for you, okay? And finally, after recording yourself in those practices, watch yourself over and over again until you get over the fact that you think you're not good enough or you're not interesting enough to listen to. Because if there are people watching you, they want you to win. That is one of the most important things I tell people when you do public speaking. And that is, every time you start talking, the little secret about the audience is nobody wants to see anybody bomb up there. They actually are hoping that you will do a good presentation, because they are also invested in listening to you all that time. So they don't want to find out at the end that it wasn't worth listening to. So they're on your side. So use that energy to make sure that you improve yourself over and over again, and practice makes perfect. Okay, the top 3 bonuses that I'm going to add to the PDF. Number 1, presentation design skills. Now, a lot of people think that this is not important, but actually this is one of the key things, especially when it comes to presentations that have visual aids. You need to learn the right techniques. In today's world, you can go to formal places like e-online or e-learning platforms to find courses that teaches you this stuff, or you can find people who just put up YouTube videos like me, or Instagram videos or help videos in different platforms, and you can find people giving you great tips on how to make your presentation look better. So learn the tools, whether it's PowerPoint, Keynote, or whatever form of software you're comfortable with, but at least be good at one, so that you don't have to rely on someone else to make your presentations great. The second thing I will add on my PDF is about how to deal with being nervous. Now, in general, there are many techniques, and one of the techniques I will put into the PDF. But in a nutshell, what you want to know is that being nervous is actually a good thing. If at any point in time you're about to speak to the public or to an audience and you're not nervous, there's only two things. Either what you have to say has no importance to anyone and you don't really care whether people like it or not, which is pretty sad. Or the second thing is you are no longer invested in really getting people to be convinced at what you have to say, because whenever you get up on stage and you're about to speak about something, automatically assume that 50% of the audience won't care or care less about what you have to say. So you actually have to put in some effort, and you know that if you don't, then you're going to fail. Having that nervousness is actually great. Learning how to deal with it and being able to present great is going to be the secret. The third extra bonus I'm going to throw into the PDF is to give you some ideas on how to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Things like having a glass of water with you no matter what, making sure you have a technical run-through. And I have some little techniques that is unique to me, like walking around the room that I'm going to speak into or the space that I will be presenting in. Also, I'll teach you some kinesthetic triggers using some daily meditation and some mental exercises. I will give you some techniques on how to use them and create triggers for yourself before you go up on stage so that you ground yourself to what needs to happen in your best form in presenting that body of speech. Okay, so those are my 10 in total, 7 plus 3. If you're interested to find out more about all this stuff that I talked about, you want to find out the exact details or the links and pages that I've been talking about, that you want to learn all this stuff in detail, make sure you follow my IG account at The Brand Mentalist by the 14th of February, because in the next few days, I will be sharing a link to my newsletter subscription page. And if you're the first 1,000 people to subscribe to my e-newsletter called The Brand Mentalist, you will receive this PDF absolutely free. So what are you waiting for? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it's helped you a little bit, even if you don't download the PDF. And thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.